In times of great oppression and despair, an unexpected leader often rises. A child born into danger, nurtured between two worlds, and destined to alter the course of history. This is the remarkable story of Moses, a man who defied an empire, freed a nation, and laid the foundation of a faith that continues to endure. Prepare to embark on a journey of faith, courage, and redemption as we delve into the extraordinary life of a prophet who spoke directly with God. The setting is ancient Egypt, a land of both magnificence and cruelty. The Hebrews, once welcomed as guests, now languish under the weight of slavery. Fearing the rapid growth of the Hebrew population, Pharaoh orders an unspeakable atrocity, the killing of all newborn Hebrew boys. The book of Exodus recounts how a Levite woman, in an act of silent defiance, gives birth to a son and hides him for 3 months. When concealment becomes impossible, she places the infant in a waterproofed basket and sets it adrift on the Nile, entrusting her child to God's providence. Divine intervention soon reveals itself when Pharaoh's daughter discovers the basket. Moved with compassion, she adopts the boy, unknowingly bringing the future deliverer of the Hebrews into the heart of the Egyptian empire. The child is named Moses, meaning drawn out of the water. Raised as a prince in Pharaoh's court, Moses is educated in the wisdom of Egypt, gaining skills and knowledge that will later serve him in ways he could not have foreseen. Yet as he grows, the duality of his identity, a Hebrew by birth but Egyptian by upbringing, creates a tension that weighs heavily on his soul. This inner conflict comes to a head when Moses, witnessing the brutal beating of a Hebrew slave by an Egyptian, intervenes in a fit of rage and kills the oppressor. Realizing the consequences of his actions, he flees Egypt, leaving behind his life of privilege. In exile, he finds refuge in the desert of Midian, where he rescues the daughters of a Midianite priest from harassment. This act of kindness leads to his marriage to Zipporah, the priest's daughter, and Moses begins a new chapter as a shepherd. Life in Midian is a stark contrast to the grandeur of Egypt. For years, Moses lives humbly, shepherding his father-in-law's flocks and finding solace in the quiet wilderness. This period of exile becomes a time of preparation, an opportunity for Moses to develop the humility, patience, and resilience he will need for the monumental task ahead. Unbeknownst to him, his journey is far from over. One fateful day, while tending his flock near Mount Horeb, Moses encounters a sight unlike any other, a bush engulfed in flames, yet not consumed. Drawn to this strange phenomenon, Moses approaches, and from within the fire, God speaks. The voice instructs him to remove his sandals, for he is standing on holy ground. Identifying himself as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, God reveals his plan to rescue the Israelites from their suffering in Egypt. He appoints Moses as the chosen leader to confront Pharaoh and lead the people to freedom. Overwhelmed by the enormity of the task, Moses hesitates, expressing doubt in his abilities. He questions his worthiness, fears rejection by the Israelites, and laments his lack of eloquence. God, however, reassures him at every turn, promising his presence and providing miraculous signs to affirm Moses' divine mission. When Moses pleads for God to send someone else, the Lord, though frustrated, graciously appoints Aaron, Moses' brother, as his spokesperson. Together they are tasked with confronting Pharaoh and demanding the release of God's people. Moses returns to Egypt with his family, armed with a newfound sense of purpose, but also the knowledge that the road ahead will be fraught with challenges. His time in Midian has transformed him from a fugitive into a shepherd of God's people. The quiet years in the desert were not a retreat, but a crucible, a time of shaping and preparation for his role as a leader and deliverer. Thus begins the next chapter in Moses' life, one marked by divine encounters, miraculous signs, and epic confrontations with the powers of Egypt. The man who once fled in fear will now return as God's chosen instrument, ready to lead his people out of bondage and into the promise of a new beginning. This is the story of Moses, a journey from the banks of the Nile to the burning sands of Midian, from exile to divine calling, and ultimately to the liberation of an enslaved nation. The burning bush marked the start of Moses' divine mission, equipping him with everything he needed to confront Egypt and liberate the Israelites. This encounter was more than just a task. It revealed God's nature in ways previously unknown. Moses, no longer a mere shepherd but a chosen instrument of God, embarked on a journey that would alter history. As Moses approached Egypt, he carried a divine authority, reinforced by his brother Aaron. Their first confrontation with Pharaoh is recorded in Exodus 5:1. Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Let my people go, so they may hold a festival to me in the wilderness." However, Pharaoh's response, "Who is the Lord that I should obey him and let Israel go?" reflected both defiance and spiritual warfare. Not only did Pharaoh refuse, but he also increased the Israelites' suffering by demanding they gather their own straw while maintaining the same brick quota, Exodus 5:6-9. This escalation caused frustration among the Israelites, who turned their anger toward Moses. In Exodus 5:22, Moses cried out to God, questioning the purpose of his mission. "Why, Lord, have you brought trouble on this people? Ever since I went to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has brought trouble on this people, and you have not rescued your people at all." God, however, reaffirmed his promise, assuring Moses that his mighty hand would compel Pharaoh to release the Israelites. In Exodus 6:6-8, God declared his covenantal faithfulness, stating, "I am the Lord. I will free you from slavery and redeem you with an outstretched arm and mighty acts of judgment." The subsequent confrontations between Moses and Pharaoh unfolded as a series of plagues that demonstrated God's supreme authority over Egypt and its gods. Each plague was a direct challenge to a specific aspect of Egyptian life and religion. For example, the first plague, turning the Nile into blood, targeted the god Hapi, who was associated with the Nile's fertility. Subsequent plagues, including frogs, gnats, flies, and livestock disease, further exposed the impotence of Egypt's deities. The plague of darkness, detailed in Exodus 10:21-23, struck at the heart of Egyptian worship by challenging Ra, their revered sun god. Despite witnessing these mighty acts, Pharaoh's heart remained hardened, vacillating between brief moments of concession and renewed defiance. It wasn't until the 10th and final plague, the death of the firstborn, that Pharaoh's resistance crumbled. Before this plague, God instructed Moses to establish the Passover, a ritual that would symbolize protection and divine deliverance. Families were to mark their doorframes with the blood of a spotless lamb, signifying their faith in God's promise. As the angel of death passed through Egypt, the Israelites were spared, while widespread mourning struck the Egyptians. Pharaoh, finally overwhelmed, relented, and ordered the Israelites to leave. The Israelites' departure marked the beginning of their exodus from Egypt. With approximately 600,000 men, along with women and children, they journeyed toward freedom. However, their liberation was soon tested. Trapped between the Red Sea and Pharaoh's pursuing army, the Israelites panicked, lamenting their perceived hopelessness. Yet, Moses, now a confident leader, assured them, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today." Exodus 14:13. In one of the Bible's most dramatic miracles, God parted the Red Sea, allowing the Israelites to cross on dry ground while destroying the Egyptian forces in its wake. This event not only delivered the Israelites, but also cemented their faith in God's power and Moses' leadership. The wilderness journey that followed was fraught with challenges, but served as a period of spiritual growth and nation-building. God provided for their needs, turning bitter water, drinkable at Marah, Exodus 15:23 through 25, raining manna from heaven, Exodus 16:4, and producing water from a rock at Rephidim, Exodus 17:5-6. These miraculous provisions reinforced God's faithfulness and tested the people's trust in Him. The Israelites' journey also included their first military conflict against the Amalekites, where Moses' raised hands symbolized dependence on divine strength. With Aaron and Hur's support, the Israelites emerged victorious. Alongside physical battles, the spiritual formation of the nation took place, particularly at Mount Sinai. There, God delivered the Ten Commandments, declaring Israel as His treasured possession, Exodus 19:5. However, the Israelites' faith wavered. While Moses was on Mount Sinai receiving God's laws, they built a golden calf, betraying their covenant with God. Moses' intercession spared them from destruction, but the incident underscored the fragility of their faith and the importance of obedience. From miraculous deliverance to moments of doubt, the story of Moses and the Israelites reveals God's unwavering commitment to His people. The events of the Exodus became central to Israel's identity, with the Passover serving as an enduring reminder of God's faithfulness. Moses, the once reluctant leader, grew into a figure of profound courage and trust in God, guiding the Israelites through trials that would shape them into a nation set apart for God's purposes. As a nation, Israel's identity and relationship with God were solidified in the third month after leaving Egypt. The Israelites arrived at the desert of Sinai and camped near the mountain. Exodus 19:2 recounts that after leaving Rephidim, they entered the wilderness and set up camp at Mount Sinai. God immediately instructed Moses to prepare the people for a divine encounter. In verses 10 and 11, God commanded, "Go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow. Have them wash their clothes and be ready by the third day, for on that day the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people." On the third morning, a dramatic event unfolded. Thunder roared, lightning flashed, a dense cloud covered the mountain, and a loud trumpet blast echoed. Exodus 19:16 vividly describes this awe-inspiring scene, which left the entire camp trembling. This powerful display of God's presence underscored His holiness. Against this backdrop, God delivered the Ten Commandments, foundational laws that would govern Israel's covenantal relationship with Him and shape moral frameworks for generations. These commandments focused on both the relationship with God, honoring Him, rejecting idolatry, and keeping the Sabbath, and relationships with others such as respecting parents, prohibiting murder, theft, adultery, false testimony, and covetousness. The people, overwhelmed by fear, pleaded with Moses to act as their mediator. In Exodus 20:19, they implored, "Speak to us yourself, and we will listen, but do not have God speak to us, or we will die." This request cemented Moses' role as the intermediary between God and the Israelites. Following the proclamation of the commandments, God gave Moses further instructions on societal, religious, and ethical matters, known as the Covenant Code. Moses recorded these laws and presented them to the people, who responded in unison, "Everything the Lord has said, we will do." Exodus 24:3. A solemn covenant ceremony followed, involving sacrifices and the sprinkling of blood on the people as a symbol of their commitment. Moses, Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and 70 elders ascended the mountain and experienced a profound vision of God. Exodus 24:10 describes the scene, noting, They saw the God of Israel. Under his feet was something like a pavement made of lapis lazuli, as bright blue as the sky. Moses was then called higher up the mountain, where he spent 40 days and nights receiving detailed instructions for constructing the tabernacle, a sacred sanctuary symbolizing God's presence among his people. While Moses was on the mountain, a crisis unfolded in the camp. Impatient with his absence, the Israelites persuaded Aaron to craft a golden calf, declaring, "These are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt." Exodus 32:4. God informed Moses of their rebellion, declaring his intent to destroy them. However, Moses interceded, appealing to God's promises and reputation among the nations. Exodus 32:14 reveals, "Then the Lord relented and did not bring on his people the disaster he had threatened. Upon descending the mountain, Moses was enraged by the people's idolatry. He shattered the stone tablets inscribed with the 10 Commandments, destroyed the golden calf, and took decisive action to address the rebellion." Despite this setback, Moses continued to act as an intercessor, pleading for the people's forgiveness, even offering his life on their behalf. Exodus 32:32. God renewed the covenant, and Moses returned to the mountain to receive new tablets. When he descended, his face radiated from his intimate encounter with God, a visible testament to his role as leader and mediator. The construction of the tabernacle marked a pivotal moment in Israel's spiritual journey. When it was completed, God's glory filled it, signifying his presence among the people. This covenant at Mount Sinai and the giving of the law became foundational for Israel's identity and their relationship with God. Moses' leadership during this era revealed both the privileges and challenges of his role, his close communion with God, his role as a lawgiver, and his struggles with the people's recurring rebellion. As the Israelites continued their wilderness journey, significant events shaped their future. The incident with the spies in Canaan, recorded in Numbers 13-14, is particularly noteworthy. Of the 12 spies sent to explore the land, only Joshua and Caleb remained faithful, urging the people to trust in God's promise. However, the rest instilled fear, leading the community to rebel and express a desire to return to Egypt. This lack of faith resulted in a 40-year period of wandering, ensuring that the rebellious generation would not enter the Promised Land. Throughout this time, Moses faced challenges to his authority, including Korah's rebellion, Numbers 16, and the incident at Meribah, Numbers 20, where Moses struck the rock in frustration instead of speaking to it as God commanded. This act of disobedience ultimately prevented him from entering the Promised Land. Despite this, Moses remained a faithful leader, preparing the new generation for their future. He appointed Joshua as his successor and delivered a series of speeches recorded in Deuteronomy, reiterating the law and urging the people to remain faithful to God. Moses' final moments were spent on Mount Nebo, where he viewed the Promised Land from afar. Deuteronomy 34:5-7 recounts his death. And Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in Moab, as the Lord had said. He buried him in Moab, but to this day, no one knows where his grave is. Though he did not enter Canaan, Moses' legacy as a prophet, leader, and lawgiver endures. He is remembered as the man who spoke with God face to face, led Israel out of bondage, and established the foundation of their covenant with God. His influence extends far beyond Israel, shaping the religious and ethical traditions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Moses' life is a testament to God's power to work through ordinary people to achieve extraordinary purposes. His story continues to inspire faith, perseverance, and leadership, offering timeless lessons for people of all backgrounds and beliefs. Thanks for watching. Keep sharing. Keep exploring.